You are completely exhausted from constantly fighting the physical world. You deeply believe that because you live in the three-dimensional reality, you must desperately belong to its chaotic system of hard work and endless physical effort. I'm going to tell you a brutal, highly offensive truth today. To force the universe to automatically manifest your massive wealth, you must live in the physical, three-dimensional world, but you must absolutely never belong to it. The true elite masters of the universe absolutely never use extreme physical effort to become incredibly wealthy. Today we are going to use the uncompromising laws of Neville Goddard to teach you exactly how to completely detach your consciousness and violently force the mechanical universe to do 100% of the massive heavy lifting for you. If you want to permanently kill the massive illusion of hard work and completely assume your heavy, untouchable throne right now, take a brief moment to subscribe to this specific channel. Your miserable, exhausting era of belonging to the corporate matrix completely dies today, and your beautiful era of automatic infinite wealth begins in this exact microsecond. We must immediately deeply dissect the massive biological lie called the hustle culture. Since the exact day you were physically born, human society has aggressively brainwashed you to deeply believe that physical sweat and intense biological exhaustion are the absolute only valid currencies for massive financial success. Your human parents, your school teachers, and the massive global media constantly told you that you must work significantly harder than everyone else if you ever want to truly escape poverty. You were strictly relentlessly taught that physical money must be desperately chased and heavily earned through massive amounts of intense physical pain. This toxic cultural philosophy is the exact specific reason why the massive majority of the human race is constantly exhausted and entirely completely broke. I want you to deeply analyze the exact psychological and massive quantum mechanics of your physical effort. The infinite quantum field and the blind mechanical machine of your subconscious mind absolutely do not understand pathetic human morality. The physical universe absolutely does not look at your extreme physical exhaustion and decide to morally reward you for being a dedicated hard worker. The universe only flawlessly responds to your dominant internal frequency and your heavy core assumption. When you wake up every single morning and you desperately, frantically rush to a miserable physical job, you are sending a massive, terrifying biological command directly to the quantum field. The sheer physical act of trying incredibly hard to get money loudly directly declares to the blind universe that you absolutely do not have any money right now. The heavy biological feeling of desperate physical effort is the exact same biological frequency as the heavy feeling of massive financial lack. If you are constantly chasing physical wealth, you are mathematically proving to your own subconscious machine that the massive wealth is actively running away from you. Neville Goddard explicitly, beautifully taught that you can absolutely never manifest exactly what you desperately want. You can only flawlessly manifest exactly what you already are. If you strongly assume the heavy identity of an exhausted corporate worker who is constantly fighting the chaotic physical economy, the blind mechanical mirror of the three-dimensional world is mathematically entirely forced to give you more exhausting physical work and more endless financial fighting. You are literally using your own massive divine quantum energy to physically aggressively trap yourself inside a permanent hamster wheel of middle-class survival. Every single time you vigorously push your physical body to the absolute biological limit, just to earn a tiny, pathetic physical paycheck, you are actively vigorously reinforcing the massive heavy steel bars of your own financial prison. You must completely violently amputate this pathetic, desperate worker mentality from your human brain today. You must deeply realize that intense physical effort is absolutely not a beautiful badge of honor. It is a massive, catastrophic psychological failure. It is the absolute definitive mathematical proof that you completely entirely lack faith in your own supreme internal divine power. A person who already securely owns the entire physical world absolutely does not run around desperately trying to physically conquer it. A true elite billionaire absolutely does not wake up in a state of biological panic and physically forcefully push their way through the massive physical matrix. The elite psychopathic creator sits in absolute complete physical silence and simply assumes the heavy, undeniable feeling of the finished creation. When you completely entirely drop the heavy physical shovel and you absolutely violently refuse to participate in the desperate hustle culture, You instantly completely stop vibrating in the toxic frequency of lack. You take all of the massive biological electricity you use to completely waste on physical effort, and you forcefully, aggressively redirect it entirely toward the heavy psychopathic assumption of instant, infinite wealth. We must now deeply, heavily explore exactly how you can permanently, aggressively force the three-dimensional matrix to become your absolute physical slave. You have been heavily, completely programmed to look at the massive global economy and the heavy physical world exactly like a terrifying, powerful master that you must politely and desperately serve. You deeply believe that you must go out into the heavy physical world and desperately beg the massive system to graciously give you a tiny piece of physical paper money. You absolutely must entirely violently reverse this toxic dynamic right now in this exact eternal present moment. The three-dimensional physical world is absolutely not your powerful master. The physical universe is a completely dead, blind mechanical machine that exists entirely and exclusively to serve your dominant internal commands. The physical matrix is literally your unpaid physical employee. But exactly like any blind robotic mechanical machine, it will only do exactly what your internal psychological posture actively programs it to do. If you approach the massive physical machine with the terrified biological posture of a desperate, exhausted worker, the machine will simply coldly look at your biological frequency and flawlessly assign you the exact physical role of the exhausted laborer. The universe will flawlessly, continuously give you difficult physical tasks, massive, frustrating financial problems, and absolutely zero real massive wealth, simply because that is the exact specific physical script you actively chose to play. But when you violently activate the supreme laws of Neville Goddard, and you aggressively assume the cold psychopathic arrogance of the absolute supreme owner, the mechanical machine immediately goes into massive biological shock. When you boldly step entirely back, cross your human arms, and completely coldly refuse to lift a single physical finger, the blind universe completely entirely panics. Because you are the sole absolute operant power and the absolute ultimate creator of your physical reality, the universe mathematically urgently requires you to be heavily, perfectly served. When you completely violently refuse to do the massive heavy lifting yourself, the massive mechanical universe has absolutely no choice but to immediately seamlessly assume the role of the desperate worker. The blind matrix must violently, rapidly rearrange millions of physical atoms and aggressively, flawlessly orchestrate massively complex physical events just to bring the infinite wealth directly to your completely motionless physical body. I want you to deeply, completely, vividly visualize this massive, dramatic shift in physical authority. Imagine a massive, towering corporate building entirely filled with thousands of panicked, desperate human workers running around in total, complete physical chaos. The amateur, terrifying manifester is completely trapped exactly on the loud, crowded ground floor, desperately running with the chaotic, sweating crowd, and completely hoping the massive corporate boss will eventually kindly notice their extremely hard work. The true master of the law of assumption absolutely never enters the crowded, exhausting physical floor. The elite psychopathic creator simply walks directly into the massive, beautiful, luxury penthouse exactly at the absolute top of the building, violently kicks the heavy wooden doors completely open, and confidently, arrogantly sits directly in the massive leather chair of the supreme director. The elite creator completely puts their physical feet up on the heavy wooden desk and absolutely entirely refuses to do any physical labor, because the master firmly assumes the undeniable heavy posture of the supreme director. The entire massive physical building of the universe completely violently shifts to immediately obey their silent command. The massive physical machine begins to furiously, completely work exclusively on behalf of the arrogant master. Massive financial opportunities completely naturally, violently fall directly into the physical lap of the elite creator. Massive, impossible sums of physical money arrive through incredibly unexplainable, perfectly orchestrated, completely random channels. The true sovereign master absolutely never physically chases a single physical dollar, because they deeply, intimately understand that their absolute only real psychological job is to firmly maintain the heavy, internal biological feeling of the wish fulfilled. When your internal reality is perfectly aggressively locked onto the frequency of massive infinite wealth, the external physical reality is mathematically violently forced to do 100% of the necessary physical work to make your internal assumption a visible physical fact. You must entirely, completely, absolutely stop trying to logically figure out exactly how the massive money will safely arrive. Figuring out the specific logical physical path is the exact exhausting job of the physical employee. You are the supreme, absolute, untouchable architect, and you only care about the massive finished physical result. You entirely gladly delegate the massive, frustrating physical process directly to the blind mechanical universe. You simply rest in your absolute sovereign power, and you arrogantly, coldly watch the dead physical mirror desperately sweat and completely exhaust itself just to seamlessly deliver your massive, beautiful empire. The massive, toxic illusion of human sweat is deeply, intimately tied to your primitive biological ego. Your logical human brain desperately wants to take absolute physical credit for your massive financial success. It intensely wants to proudly, confidently point at your massive physical exhaustion and loudly tell the entire physical world that you completely, heavily earned your massive money through immense physical suffering. You must completely, violently crush this pathetic biological ego right now. The true absolute God state absolutely requires complete, total silence and humility to the massive, unseen quantum power. You must be completely, entirely willing to accept massive sums of physical money for doing absolutely nothing at all. You must deeply, rigorously train your nervous system to feel completely safe and highly comfortable with massive, entirely unearned wealth. If you secretly, deeply, internally believe that you must biologically suffer to be truly worthy of your massive empire, you will aggressively, subconsciously, entirely sabotage the automatic delivery system of the physical universe. You will literally, mathematically create fake, massive physical problems just so you can physically, forcefully fight them and eventually feel exactly like a hard worker again. You must completely, violently drop the toxic biological addiction to physical struggle and extreme effort. You simply, entirely, arrogantly accept that you are the absolute favored sovereign ruler of the physical matrix, and you completely, effortlessly allow the blind mechanical universe to freely dump massive, infinite wealth directly onto your motionless physical lap. You absolutely, completely declare mental bankruptcy on the pathetic concept of physical effort today. We must now immediately enter the second massive chamber of this psychological masterclass and deeply understand exactly how to live in the physical world completely without belonging to it. To successfully, entirely detach from the physical matrix, you must absolutely master the state of supreme rest that Neville Goddard called the Sabbath. The Sabbath is a psychological posture of total authority and the absolute certainty that your creation is already entirely finished in the quantum realm. You have been heavily conditioned by a pathetic society to believe that you must be in constant motion to be worthy of success. You've been taught that if you stop grinding, your financial empire will instantly collapse. This is a biological lie designed to keep your divine energy trapped in the lowest tier of survival. The true master of the law of assumption understands that physical effort is the ultimate proof that you don't actually believe your own word. When you try to force the 3D world to change, you are admitting that the internal world hasn't changed yet. The Sabbath state is the exact moment you take your human hands off the steering wheel of reality and allow the mechanical universe to execute your will with mathematical perfection. The Sabbath is the most offensive and powerful weapon of the psychopathic creator. While the exhausted masses run around desperately trying to make a buck, you sit in absolute silence with the unshakable certainty that the money is already yours. Your logical mind will try to fight this state of stillness. Your brain has been wired to believe that if you aren't doing anything, you are failing. But in the quantum realm, physical movement is often the biggest obstacle to instant manifestation. When you enter the Sabbath, you broadcast a frequency of absolute ownership. The mechanical universe looks at your stillness and concludes that the work is already done. Because the matrix is a dead mirror, it is forced to reflect your internal calm in the form of external physical results. If you refuse to sweat, the universe is forced to sweat for you. If you refuse to chase opportunities, opportunities are forced to chase you. This is the do-nothing strategy that leaves economists and hardcore hustlers completely baffled. You aren't being lazy. You're exercising your sovereign authority over the simulation. However, we must urgently address the biological trap that is about to trigger in your physical body. Your nervous system is chemically addicted to the stress of survival and the lie of hard work. For your entire adult life, your body has been flooded with cortisol and adrenaline every time you try to reach a financial goal. Your body has learned to link success with physical suffering. When you decide right now to cross your arms and let the universe do 100% of the heavy lifting, your primal brain is going to go into absolute panic. Your amygdala will perceive this silence and rest as a mortal threat to your safety. You will feel an overwhelming wave of anxiety, a tight grip in your chest, and an uncontrollable urge to go back to desperately hustling. Your body believes that if you aren't panicking, you aren't trying hard enough. You cannot maintain the state of the Sabbath and sit on the throne of God if your physical vessel is screaming in biological terror. You cannot command the universe if your own nerves are betraying your authority. Because I absolutely refuse to let your primitive biology sabotage your automated empire, I have provided the ultimate mechanical solution. You must perform a manual override on your biological hardware before you can hold the posture of the Sabbath. I want you to pause this audio right now and look directly below this video in the pinned comments section. I have left a highly specific and lethal biological override protocol there. This is not some soft, feel-good spiritual affirmation. It is a purely mechanical code designed to bypass your panicking logical mind and aggressively flush the stress hormones out of your cells. This protocol forces your nervous system into a state of deep safety and psychopathic apathy. It silences the biological alarm, so you can finally allow the universe to work while you watch in silence. Go to the pinned comment now, use this protocol to shut down your biological resistance, and come back here to learn how compelled action will deliver your wealth effortlessly. Now that your physical body is entirely calm and your nervous system has accepted your supreme authority, we must examine the phenomenon of compelled action. A lot of people mistake the Sabbath state for total and permanent inaction, but that is a massive mistake. The Sabbath means you stop using ego-driven physical force to try and change the world. When the universe does 100% of the work, it uses your physical body as a delivery instrument. This is what Neville Goddard called compelled action. In the Sabbath state, you don't logically decide what to do to make money. You are moved by an irresistible, natural impulse. You might feel a sudden urge to go to a specific place or reach out to a specific person without knowing exactly why. You don't feel the weight of hard work or the exhaustion of the grind. You feel as though you are being swept up by an invisible current of perfect events. Compelled action feels like a smooth, effortless ride because the bridge of incidents has already been built by the mechanical universe. Unlike the burnt-out hustler trying to kick doors down, the master in the Sabbath state walks toward doors that have already been opened by the universe. You don't need to hunt for clients or pitch investors. The universe moves the pieces on the chessboard of reality and forces those people to come to you. They feel an inexplicable need to hire you, to hand you money, or to offer you lucrative partnerships. They think it was their own idea, but in reality, they are just mechanical puppets obeying your dominant assumption. The Sabbath allows the matrix to execute your will through thousands of other people simultaneously. While you rest on your internal throne, the entire world is conspiring and working overtime to materialize your empire in the physical realm. Your only responsibility is to remain at rest and refuse to tune back into the frequency of the struggle. You must treat your financial reality with the cold detachment of an architect watching a building being constructed. The architect doesn't carry bricks or mix cement with their bare hands. The architect simply draws up the master plan, assumes the building is already finished in their mind, and lets the crew handle the physical labor. If the architect steps down onto the job site and starts trying to haul bricks, they are admitting they don't trust their own team or their own blueprint. The mechanical universe is your construction crew, and your internal state is the master plan. Let the universe carry the bricks. Let the matrix handle the logistical details of how the money will arrive. Keep your focus entirely on the end result and indulge in the supreme pleasure of watching your empire be built brick by brick without ever having to move a single unnecessary muscle. Your wealth is now an automatic and inevitable process. We must now entirely enter the final and absolute most powerful psychological chamber of this massive masterclass. You have successfully entirely killed the toxic illusion of the hustle culture, and you have violently, forcefully dropped the massive, heavy shovel of physical effort. You deeply understand the profound mechanics of the Sabbath state, and you completely know exactly how to allow the blind mechanical universe to flawlessly execute the massive action required to build your financial empire. But we must now directly specifically address exactly how the universe actually moves the physical world to bring you your massive money. You must deeply understand the terrifying and completely beautiful concept of the puppet master. You have been entirely brainwashed to deeply believe that you must constantly forcefully persuade other human beings to give you physical money. You think you must desperately convince a massive corporate boss to give you a tiny promotion, or aggressively persuade a wealthy client to buy your physical product. This is a massive biological lie entirely based on the pathetic illusion of independent free will. According to the absolute flawless laws of quantum physics and the supreme teachings of Neville Goddard, every single human being in your physical reality is absolutely nothing more than a dead mechanical puppet entirely controlled by your own dominant assumption. When you completely violently refuse to participate in the desperate hustle culture and you confidently, arrogantly assume the heavy throne of the God state, the universe completely takes over the massive physical board game. The blind mechanical matrix literally reaches out and takes absolute control of the minds of the people who hold the physical money you desire. The massive corporate bosses, the wealthy elite investors, and the strict global bankers absolutely do not have the independent biological power to deny your massive wealth. Because you are firmly holding the heavy frequency of the finished creation, the universe mathematically forces these specific individuals to completely change their physical behavior to serve your massive empire. An elite investor will suddenly experience a completely unexplainable, compelling urge to contact you and offer you a massive financial deal. A corporate director will violently completely change their mind and aggressively promote you entirely without any desperate physical effort on your part. These people will deeply logically believe that giving you massive amounts of physical money was entirely their own independent idea, but you will sit in your heavy leather chair and coldly absolutely know the terrifying truth. They are completely blindly following the exact specific physical script that your psychopathic apathy has actively written for them. To successfully, completely allow this massive universal mechanism to flawlessly operate, you must violently, permanently take your human hands entirely off the physical steering wheel of your life. You must completely stop trying to manually, logically force the bridge of incidents to happen. The amateur manifester completely panics when they enter the Sabbath state, because they suddenly feel exactly like they are doing absolutely nothing. They immediately desperately run to the physical bookstore and buy a pathetic self-help book about how to wake up at 4 in the morning to work significantly harder. They frantically open their computer and actively send out thousands of desperate physical resumes, completely begging the dead physical matrix for a tiny, cheap opportunity. You must absolutely never make this massive, toxic biological mistake. When you are operating from the absolute supreme authority of the Sabbath, you completely entirely stop trying to logically figure out the physical how. You absolutely do not force physical doors to open. You simply confidently, arrogantly wait for the blind mechanical universe to violently kick the physical doors completely open directly in front of your human face. You must deeply, completely trust the massive, invisible conveyor belt of the physical universe. The bridge of incidents is exactly like a massive, highly advanced digital conveyor belt that is mathematically actively carrying you directly toward your massive, infinite wealth. When you step onto a physical conveyor belt, you absolutely do not start frantically, aggressively running to try and make it move faster. You simply stand completely still, cross your human arms and allow the massive mechanical machine to do 100% of the heavy physical lifting. If you suddenly completely panic and try to physically run on the massive belt, you will instantly trip, entirely fall down and completely ruin the flawless automatic process. You must deeply, vigorously apply this exact same cold apathy to your physical financial reality. You simply float exactly like a powerful supreme monarch being graciously carried by their massive loyal servants. Every single physical event that happens in your daily life, even the events that look completely chaotic or entirely negative, are actually highly calculated massive steps on the perfectly designed bridge of incidents. You completely refuse to biologically react to any temporary physical problems because you deeply, intimately know that the blind universe is currently heavily sweating and desperately working in the background just to flawlessly deliver your massive physical millions. This profound, heavy level of physical surrender is the absolute ultimate test of the elite creator. It completely requires a terrifying amount of psychopathic arrogance to calmly sit entirely still, while the massive physical world loudly screams that you should be working harder. But the exact microsecond you completely mathematically prove to the universe that you absolutely will not move a single physical muscle out of biological fear, the Matrix completely entirely surrenders to your supreme authority. The physical simulation completely recognizes that its old pathetic tricks of anxiety and physical exhaustion absolutely do not work on you anymore. You have successfully completely hacked the core digital architecture of the physical economy. You are absolutely no longer a desperate physical slave, desperately trying to survive the massive chaotic market. You are the absolute silent, invisible architect of the entire physical system. You simply internally assume the heavy, massive weight of your new millionaire identity, and you entirely effortlessly watch the dead physical mirror frantically, constantly reorganize its physical atoms just to pay you your massive daily tribute. If you have completely absorbed the heavy, uncompromising frequency of this massive masterclass, your psychological architecture has been permanently, completely, entirely rewritten. You are absolutely no longer a terrified, completely helpless worker, trapped in the massive, slow, exhausting survival mode of the physical simulation. You can absolutely never go back to the exhausting, pathetic illusion of trying to physically heavily earn your massive money through endless human sweat. You have successfully discovered the massive, invisible developer console inside your own divine imagination. You have completely learned how to violently, entirely drop the massive burden of physical effort, and you have successfully assumed the beautiful, untouchable God state of the absolute Sabbath. You completely understand that your absolute only physical job is to firmly, arrogantly hold the heavy feeling of the finished creation and completely allow the blind, mechanical universe to flawlessly, violently execute the massive delivery of your infinite physical wealth. You have entirely bypassed the massive trap of the corporate hustle culture, and you have permanently, absolutely claimed your massive sovereign advantage. But to permanently lock this terrifying, untouchable, completely restful identity into the physical matrix of your reality, and to mathematically prove to your own nervous system that you have completely, entirely dropped the heavy shovel of physical effort, you must take one final, entirely irreversible physical action. You must completely, violently cut the massive, heavy cord to the pathetic, exhausted middle class and silently step directly onto the massive, heavy throne of your absolute wealth without ever looking back. You are the supreme, final, absolute authority of your entire physical existence, who has successfully, completely hacked the biological source code of the mechanical universe. To permanently lock this massive, restful command into your human brain, and to absolutely guarantee that the subconscious machine actively, forcefully executes your final command at absolute maximum speed, you must immediately issue a physical declaration to the infinite quantum field. I want you to completely step into the quiet, motionless, crushing power of the absolute monarch. I want you to scroll down to the comment section directly below this specific video. I want you to type the exact final code with the absolute, terrifying, cold certainty of a supreme digital creator who is completely commanding the physical matrix to do all the work. Do not type it with pathetic, weak hope, and absolutely do not type it with desperate biological excitement. Type it with the heavy, unbothered, completely cold apathy of a royal king who is simply giving an absolute, undeniable mathematical order to their loyal servants. Type the exact words: I live in the physical world, but I absolutely do not belong to it. I let the universe manifest my wealth. Let the physical movement of your human fingers typing those exact words be the absolute last moment you ever passionately, desperately try to physically force the physical matrix to pay you. Make the ultimate, uncompromising declaration right now by typing, I live in the physical world, but I absolutely do not belong to it. I let the universe manifest my wealth. The massive, toxic illusion of the hustle culture is completely, entirely destroyed. The biological urge to violently work hard is permanently turned off, and your millions of dollars are mathematically rushing toward you, entirely, automatically. Go sit in the pristine, flawless safety of your completely new, overpowered identity, cross your physical arms, and deeply enjoy the spectacular automatic wealth that your beautiful psychopathic Sabbath has already violently forced into physical existence.